today we got a question from Nathan, and if I seem a little bit more mellow today, guys, I just wanted to sort of let you know, we just got back to training, and my favorite time to meditate is after the evening classes are over. I'll jump on the mat and do my evening meditation, and so right now I'm a little chill, a little mellow, so if that comes through, that's why. But today's question's from Nathan. He's in Western Australia, in Perth. He says, good day. And he says he's wondering what the difference is between pure jiu-jitsu practitioners and people that roll and do jiu-jitsu that have also done MMA fighting and wrestling. He said, is it the pressure? Is it the transitions and positions? You know, anything? He's like, just wondering kind of what's going on there. What's the difference? Because, and I asked him, I was like, you know, have you rolled with these type of people? And he says he's been training for about 2 years, and he says that, you know, the thing he notices is the speed and the pressure that they have, and he's wondering, again, you know, what's going on there? So, brother, thank you for the question. So, Nathan, let's get into it. When it comes to wrestlers and MMA fighters, there are going to be some differences. First off, you're going to have a lot more urgency. And I'll get to why this is, but I'm just kind of go through why, you know, what the differences are. A lot of urgency. You know, whereas jiu-jitsu practitioners typically take a lot more time and they set things up a little bit more methodically. The MMA fighters and wrestlers, tons and tons of urgency, right? Explosiveness. You'll notice that they're a lot more explosive and a lot more fast, and there's more energy going into everything that they do. And you'll also notice that, again, like you were saying, especially from wrestlers, if you're in like a side control or a mount, there's like a maximum pressure, right? Tons and tons of pressure that's on you, and you feel it, and you're like, it's so much tighter than what you're used to as a jiu-jitsu practitioner, right? Now let's talk about why that is. When it comes to wrestling, for instance, wrestling, first off, what do you do if you get to a person on their back? You pin them. And when you pin a person, I mean, you're squeezing with as much pressure as you can, okay? And so again, that's become ingrained in someone that's wrestled and then does jiu-jitsu. So they're gonna get to side control and whoo, squeeze, trust me. When I got into jiu-jitsu and I was straight out of wrestling and going into tournaments, I mean, I'd get people in side control. I'm squeezing like I'm trying to pin them, and then eventually I would adjust to submit them. When it comes to wrestling, you also have a lot of stalling calls. So in wrestling, you can't stall like you can in jiu-jitsu. In jiu-jitsu, they don't really call stalling calls. It's very rare. But in wrestling, they'll call them. And again, as a wrestler, you don't want to be a staller, right? Also, the rounds are shorter. In a wrestling match, it's broken into multiple periods, and the periods are shorter. So it's like these short bursts of energy going really hard, like go, 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 go. That's the tempo. Go, go, go for 2 minutes. And again, they have even rules that sort of dictate what kind of grips you can use, because you can't grip in certain ways because, again, they don't want people to stall. So again, that's part of the reason why people are being subjected to these rules for years, and it wires them to grapple in this way. Now with mixed martial arts fighting, again, it's an urgency thing, especially if you're a ground fighter, because, you know, one, if you take someone down in MMA and you get to the ground, you've got to constantly stay active. And you have to constantly advance position and do damage, because if you don't do some of that, then they're going to stand the fight up. And then you may have spent all your energy to get the person down, and then if you don't do anything, you're going to get stood up. So you have to keep moving. And then I don't know about most people, but at least for me, if you fought, okay, that's why I say it, but if you fought, and what it might be different, but for me, when I fought, I didn't want to be in there any longer than I had to. I enjoyed fighting. I enjoyed the preparation for it. I enjoyed the sort of, it was almost spiritual for me, because whenever you put yourself into these highly stressful situations, it's like this transcendent gateway that you go through, right? Like you become someone different on the other side. And so I enjoyed that part of it, but I didn't enjoy getting my head knocked around any more than I had to. And so when I would see a neck and an arm or leg or whatever pop up, boom, I would dive on it and really go after it and just go for it and rip it, right? With all my energy. And again, that is a different sort of mindset that you have in jiu-jitsu, because again, in mixed martial arts fighting, there's a lot of damage and long-term harm that could come to you, whereas jiu-jitsu, not as much, right? When you go to jiu-jitsu, also the rules are different, right? Now, when you go to jiu-jitsu, let's think about jiu-jitsu. The tempo is much different. If wrestling and MMA are like go, 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 you know, sometimes some moderate pace, but a lot of times it's very fast. Jiu-jitsu is kind of like this slow, fast stop, meaning like, let's say I'm going for a takedown. I'm slow to the setup, fast to the execution, taking the person down, and once I get them down, I'm going to stop and hold position. Now that I'm inside their guard, I'm going to slowly set up my guard, break the guard open. As soon as the guard the guard opens up, boom, fast to pass the guard. Once I pass the guard, I'm going to stop and hold position. And so it's a different tempo. Now this can be adjusted a little bit depending on the type of rules that you go for, whether it's like, you know, submission only, no time limit, or, you know, 6 minute with points. I mean, but again, what's happening is you have these differences. Also think about this. In Jiu-jitsu, you can be a lot more methodical, say, than MMA. I mean, there is some of that, but again, think about like in MMA, you can get punched. So if you had a guy sitting there playing like an open guard position and like playing that mid-range, he's going to get hit. Whereas in MMA, in Jiu-Jitsu, there's nothing like that. So you can play that game, and you got to be way more cautious about, you know, passing that guard than you would be in MMA, because, you know, again, they have all kinds of tricks that they can throw at your sleeve that they couldn't in a fight. In wrestling, they don't have these kinds of joint locks, you know, that you can hold your arm back behind your back or something, but you can't rip it. And so they can move more explosively because they don't have those sorts of things going on. And so when that happens, again, now you're coming back into the jiu-jitsu part of it. When you roll with them, if you have someone that does some jiu-jitsu but like has a base in wrestling or fighting and MMA fighting, they engage way differently than a pure jiu-jitsu practitioner. I mean, it's just the way it is, and you'll feel it, you know. And this is true if you've rolled with someone that does sambo, judo, whatever, that gets into jiu-jitsu. They engage a little bit differently, right? But those are some of the main differences that I personally have seen in my experience. Now, I wanted to give you guys one idea to chew on for your training, and that is that if you roll with some of these people, and Nathan, I'll sort of share this with you as well. If you roll with some of these people inside your gym and they frustrate you because they engage differently and they put that pressure on you and you're not used to it, roll with them more. Go with them as many times as you can, because for me, over the years, I've run into people who technically weren't as, you know, technical as me in jiu-jitsu and grappling, but they would have some weird thing that they did that threw me off. You know, like MMA fighters would engage and they would just grab submissions. They would like, they wouldn't go position or before submission. They would just like see a submission and rip it, right? I had to get used to dealing with that. I remember rolling with sambo guys and having to deal with the guy just diving on my legs at any position. Had to get used to that. Rolling with judo guys who would turtle up and they would just, I mean, if you've never rolled with like a really strong judoka who's got a good turtle, it's a different situation. But again, they each give you these new challenges to play with. And so for me, like, again, like, this is just the way I am. I would want to roll those guys more because I wanted to figure out how I can take my jiu-jitsu and make it work against this style. And it's a really important thing because, again, the more you can adapt your jiu-jitsu to other people's styles and things like that, the smarter you get with your game overall. And again, personally, this is just my thinking, I would never want to be in a situation where I'm like, well, I can roll against this pure jiu-jitsu guy, but if they're a wrestler, I suck against wrestlers. You should be able to go roll against anybody. But again, the cool part is you get a better understanding of how your game works and how to use it against certain people. And this is useful if you compete. This is useful if you're rolling in your gym or whatever. And so, again, I would encourage you, if you roll with someone that's got kind of like a weird sort of thing to their jiu-jitsu because of previous backgrounds, roll with them more to try to figure them out, because it's a really good thing for your jiu-jitsu. So anyway, I think the video is long enough. Nathan, hopefully that's helpful to you. And guys, I'll talk to you next time.